Trevor Noah's Born a Crime is trending, and for good reason. I'm seeing the evidence everywhere this year. This spring, as I ran our curriculum book choice tournament across the high school levels and hundreds, if not thousands of teachers weighed in, I watched Born a Crime soar to the finals in both the 9th and 10th category and the 11th and 12th category. So in 9th and 10th out of 16 books, Born a Crime came out as the second most popular. And in 11th and 12th, out of 32 different possible books teachers could vote for to be like their absolute favorite to include in their curriculum, Born a Crime came up second. Pretty good, right? Then, as summer began just now, and I opened up this new podcast series, Plan My Lesson, which starts today, right now, I immediately received 3 separate requests for Born a Crime lessons. No other book got more than 2. Naturally, this book soaring in popularity, new to the scene, it makes sense that teachers are looking for fun activities to do with it. There's not that much out there being shared yet. So these 3 requests that I got all asked for slightly different but overlapping things. One teacher was searching for ways to get students connecting the text to the 5 key themes of the IB curriculum. In case you don't know the International Baccalaureate curriculum, those 5 themes are identities, experiences, human ingenuity, social organization, and sharing the planet. That is a perfect set of themes for Born a Crime. Another teacher was planning to use it as an anchor for a memoir class, and still another teacher wanted to help students identify rhetorical devices inside, while also developing their question-asking skills and connecting key moments in the text with argument claims. So I asked myself, is it possible to fulfill all these needs with one lesson and then to roll it out today in the very first podcast of the Plan My Lesson series? I think so. What we want is an in-depth lesson on a section of Trevor Noah's Born a Crime with a focus on connecting its big ideas to big ideas in our students' own lives, in our world right now. Exploring text passages carefully along the way for writer's craft moves and theme development. And of course, we want it to be engaging. We want kids to care. Maybe we want to get them up and out of their seats. And we want to fit it neatly into one class period. So today, in the very first ever of our Plan My Class series of podcasts, let's dive into planning an engaging, goal-fulfilling lesson for Trevor Noah's Born a Crime. Whether or not you're teaching this book, you're going to get a lot of ideas for your own lesson planning here. And maybe you'll even be inspired to pick up Born a Crime because it's amazing. After we walk through the lesson itself, we'll be talking about helpful takeaways from designing this lesson that you can apply to designing any lesson. So be sure to stay tuned to the end. I'll also be telling you how to grab all the curriculum for this lesson totally free. So let's dive in. Welcome to the Spark Creativity Teacher Podcast, a podcast for English teachers looking for more creativity, more engagement, more joy. And no more scripted curriculum, lesson planning ruts, or boring book lists. I'm Betsy Potash, and I'm honored you're trusting me to help. You're not alone on this creative journey anymore. So Born a Crime is a pretty long book, and none of the teachers who made this request gave me a specific part of it that they wanted a lesson for. So I chose a part. It's the section in which Trevor Noah shares about his experience with languages. This part had such an impact on me, and I was delighted to get to do a deep dive on it. It's perfect for exploring the IB themes. It's super funny and engaging. It's powerful, and it showcases several writer's craft moves that students can dig into. If you have the same blue and yellow book that I do, it's in chapter 4, which is titled Chameleon. It starts on page 54 in the second paragraph and then finishes on page 59. So it's almost all of chapter 4. Conveniently, Facing History and Ourselves, the online site, has almost exactly this section in PDF form. So if for some reason you just want like a printable section of this passage, you could find it through the link in the show notes at Facing History and Ourselves. It's not quite exactly what they give, but it's super close. So you'd be able to use it if you want to give your students something to annotate during the lesson and they can't write in their book. In this section, Trevor Noah talks about all the languages that he learned as a kid, which is a really impressive amount, and how they helped him to be known, liked, and safe with a lot of different groups of people that might have been hostile to him otherwise. He gives really specific examples and stories. They're thought-provoking, they're entertaining, which is really like a microcosm for the entire book. All right, so now we're getting centered on the passage that we're going to be doing a lesson for. If you teach with an inquiry mindset, a good place for us to start is to just consider an essential question for this book, or an essential question that would really work well with this section, chameleon. Here are a few that you might consider. How does the way people adapt to challenge shape their identity? How do people connect with each other? How does the way we communicate connect or divide us? Is learning language still important in the age of AI? Those are a few ideas that you could have in the back of your mind for your sort of overarching unit here. Now, getting far more specific, I want to suggest that you kick off this lesson with an agenda slide or by writing your agenda on the board. This is something I have always done. Actually, I didn't do it for like the first week I was a teacher, and every single student seemed to walk in the door and say, "Hey, what are we doing today? What are we doing? Are we doing anything today? What's the plan for today?" And I was a little overwhelmed just trying to get everything ready for the lesson without telling 17 different kids what the lesson was going to be. And so I quickly moved to the system of having an agenda on the board, and I would just point to it. And I even like to put up like about how many minutes each part of the lesson is going to be. So I've got a visual for you in the show notes. I even have the slide for you to just download and use. But having that agenda up there can make your life so much easier. One thing I included that I really like as a community builder at the top of the agenda before we get into the lesson is a quick attendance question. So as your students come in, I think it's nice to build in an attendance question, in this case, that even could relate to the material. So I thought a fun one for today would just be, what language or languages do you speak? And you can give students a chance to share. Their classmates may have no idea that they speak 4 languages, or that they're completely fluent in 2, or, that they're studying German on the weekends with Duolingo or whatever. It's a nice little community builder, and it starts to get kids thinking about the theme for the day. Next up, after that quick attendance question, I want to talk about a hook for this lesson that I am really excited about. I stumbled across this video a couple weeks ago, and I showed it to my middle school son, who absolutely and in every way loved it and shared it with his father and is still talking about it. And I think it makes a perfect hook for this lesson about Trevor Noah's focus on language. So there's a YouTube video, I think it's titled "Nerdy Professor Shocks High School something, something, something." But the point is, this linguistics professor comes to a school to give a speech during Languages Week. And he's standing up at the front, and the video pans out to the audience, and the kids look so bored. Like, you can see they are not engaged, they're not excited. And he stands up there and he says, "Actually, I'm going to be giving this speech in your language. I've spent the last few weeks learning Gen Alpha slang, and I'm going to tell you my whole speech in Gen Alpha slang." And the kids they sit up straighter, they lean forward, they smile, they laugh, they pay attention. And it is so fun. It's just a 5-minute speech. It starts at about minute 2, it goes to about minute 7. And he uses, all these bits of slang: put the fries in the bag, skibbity brain rot, connect the drip, just like all these different things. And every time he does, it's like the kids just magically become even more excited about what he's saying. And it's actually a really nice speech about how innovation in language is important, and learning languages helps people understand each other, just like really nice big overall themes, as well as just clearly demonstrating this idea that it's easier to connect to somebody and for them to value you and what you say when you can speak their language. One quick note, there are a couple of the slang phrases that he uses that have a swear word in them, but it's so obvious that he's not like swearing. He's just speaking the slang. To me, it doesn't come off as offensive at all. So I think kids who are old enough to read Born a Crime will certainly be able to handle it, but you can preview it to make sure you feel the same way. I find this speech to just be the perfect hook for the lesson because it gets your class thinking about this role of language in connecting and dividing people in a framework they can really relate to. So after you play this 5-minute video, we're going to transition into the next part of the lesson that's going to ask students to consider questions about language in this speech and in their own lives. So, the next part. Connecting to real life questions. So we want to get students thinking about languages in their lives right before we talk about language in Trevor Noah's life and sort of do some close reading. So here I'm going to suggest that you do a silent discussion just for 10 minutes. And there are a lot of different ways to do a silent discussion. You can do it with Google Slides. You can do it by putting pieces of chart paper up around the room. You can do it by jotting questions spread out across your whiteboard and chalkboard if you've got a couple boards on 2 walls of your room, as I sometimes have in classrooms. Whatever works for you. Ideally, I'd like to have students getting up and out of their seats instead of typing on a Google slide, but if you're teaching online or, you're in a really small room or whatever, a Google slide works too. But the idea is you're going to scatter your questions in writing across your walls or Google Slides, and students are going to get up. And again, ideally, if you can give them some different colors of markers or pens, they're each going to be contributing their thoughts to the discussion in their own color and their own handwriting all across your walls. So here are some examples of the types of questions I would suggest you put up around the room. And there's a complete list in the curriculum set that goes with this podcast and also in the full show notes at nowsparkcreativity.com. So it's questions like, did you pay more attention to the professor's speech because of his use of Gen Alpha slang? Did the students in the room? Have you ever tried to learn a language with an app program or book on your own? Have you ever tried using Google Translate for anything? Were you impressed by it? Do you speak more than one language? What other languages do you speak? What does speaking another language give to you? What does it give to others? What do you lose if you have no way to communicate with someone whose language you don't speak? What languages do you notice being spoken in our school and community? So give kids some time to circulate, have them jot down their name with each comment just to provide a little bit of low-key accountability, and then participate with them or guide kids back on track who are getting off track. So you're just going to do this for like 10 minutes. As soon as you feel engagement is dropping, announce that they have 1 minute left and you just want them to circulate around for the last minute and read other people's responses before the discussion comes to an end. Okay, so students have now kind of had their background knowledge activated a little bit, their interest activated a little bit on the concept of language and how it can connect people. Now we're going to move into the text. So again, the next part of the lesson. Now we want to take these big questions about language and power and move them into this section of the book, Chameleon. So I would suggest for this part of the lesson, you have students work in partners, although some kids may really prefer to work alone, and I like to honor that. Sometimes as a student myself, I just really disliked group work. And I think if kids just feel like they'll do a great job by themselves and that's what they're feeling that day, that's totally fine. So you can either print the facing history in ourselves text so that kids can write right on it, or you can just have them open their book to the section. You can photocopy out of your book. Because this next part is going to be a close reading activity, it would be nice if they had something they could write on in front of them, but they don't have to. And now you're going to give them about 20 minutes in their partners to choose a passage in the small section that we're focusing on and walk through the steps of this next close reading activity. While they're doing that, I would suggest you make available to them whatever your resource is for literary terms. For me, I've created like a little deck of vocabulary cards for literary terms that I made for the Lighthouse. It's really great to just laminate and keep some decks in your classroom. That could be the resource that's available to kids. Maybe you just have like a literary terms handout that just lists a bunch of terms. Maybe there's a website you point students to, whatever. That's a resource I think you want to just give them to be useful during this lesson. Some kids will use it and some kids won't. Now, they are going to get a piece of paper that kind of guides them through the close reading. Again, you can get this free in the curriculum set for this lesson. And the idea is that they're going to choose a passage that helps illuminate how Trevor Noah describes his life with language. So at the top of the handout, it says to them, why does Trevor Noah call himself a chameleon? How does language help him adapt to the challenges of his life? How did language reinforce the segregation and hierarchy of apartheid? So they have these kind of big questions in mind. And then it asks them to choose some passage, a paragraph from all of that text in chapter 4 that would help them answer those questions. They can sort of highlight it in their book or in their photocopies or just look at it or whatever. And then they're going to be guided through creating a little one-pager about that bit of text. It's really a close reading activity that functions well as a one-pager. It's not like a final assessment that they're going to spend hours on. They're just kind of going to be putting their takeaways into this format that's partly visual and partly text, and that will help them remember and focus. So they're going to be considering these different elements on the piece of paper. And again, the handout walks you through it. In one part of the paper, they're going to consider the challenge that Trevor Noah is facing in the part of text they've chosen. So what's going on? Why does he need language? What's he up against? In another part, they're going to create a section that says, that answers, how does Trevor Noah make his point about language with this passage? Examine the text for literary devices Noah uses to help express the challenge and his solution to the challenge. Showcase the craft moves in the boxes in the upper right of the page. So for teachers who are wanting kids to be really examining, is there symbolism here? Is there a tone that creates an effect with the reader? Is there a metaphor? Is there an anaphora? Whatever, what's going on? What is Trevor Noah doing to help express his ideas about language? Then there's a part about theme. How would you and your partner express the theme in this book? Use the space in the middle to illustrate the theme using your words, at least one quotation, and some kind of illustration. Then there's sort of a zooming in on the fact that the main symbol Trevor Noah uses here is that he's a chameleon. That's like a strong overriding concept in this chapter. The chapter is named Chameleon. So I put a little chameleon in the heart of the one-pager, and I am asking students to find one line in their passage that really shows this idea that he's a chameleon. So this is going to help them be thinking, if you're practicing in class this idea that you have a thesis or that you're trying to give evidence for something by finding specific text, this is just a low-key way that they're practicing that skill. Then down at the bottom of the paper, they're going to brainstorm a list of questions that are on their mind now relating to language. So this is where we started the class, sort of making connections to their life and their needs in the world. And then now we're kind of coming back to it through the lens of Trevor Noah's experiences and connecting it to their own. So these could be questions like, how did Trevor Noah even learn all these languages? What role does language play in getting opportunities in my country? Is it anything like the role that it played in South Africa for Trevor Noah? Just whatever's on their mind, they can create a list of questions on this close reading one-pager, and that's the last thing that they will do. So again, you're going to give them about 20 minutes. During this time, you can be up, you can be walking around, giving them advice, answering questions, helping bring their attention back to the text if they're kind of getting away from it and just saying whatever they want. As you come to the end of that 20 minutes, just give a call and say, it's okay if you're not totally done, but we are going to move on in 2 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever kind of warning you want to give, but give a clear warning. Then as you come to the end, have partners stand up with their piece, with their one-pagers, and go and find other partners that they can showcase their passage to. So just say, find your stand up with your partner, find another partnership, present your passage to them, show them how you thought it represented Trevor Noah's chameleon, talk to them about some of your questions. You have 2 minutes or whatever, and then maybe do it one more time. So you're just doing like a quick double pair share. Like instead of share with a partner, it's partners share with other partners. At this point, you can either have students put their one-pagers up in a blank space on your wall as like a big gallery that you can keep referring back to as you move forward in the text on future days, or you can collect it, although I wouldn't recommend. This is just like a quick in-class activity that's for practice. You can give it a participation grade. It doesn't deserve like a full rubric, in my opinion, more like a stamp or a sticker. Okay, so now we're in the last few minutes of the lesson, and I just want to wrap it up with a quick exit task. I'm going to challenge your art skills a little bit here. This may make you a little bit uncomfortable, but I have put a large picture, just a line drawing that's very simple of a chameleon in the full show notes. And I think it would be really cool if you could just put up a very simple outline of a big chameleon on your whiteboard or chalkboard, and then give every student a Post-it and have them answer these questions on the Post-it for the exit task. How is Trevor Noah like a chameleon? How did his approach to language shape his life? And just have them write their answer on the Post-it with their name and then stick it inside the chameleon on their way out. So that's the whole lesson. Now, here at the end, I want to talk a little bit about the teaching takeaways from this lesson. So maybe you're not teaching Trevor Noah's Born a Crime, but I hope that you still feel like you have some ideas for a lesson plan for pretty much anything that you might be planning right now. So let's talk through a few of these takeaways that are worth highlighting. One thing is, I think it's always useful to build community at the start of class with an attendance question if you have time. And if every once in a while you can theme it to the book that you're reading, it can be a really nice way to sort of activate student interest, activate their prior knowledge. Another thing I want to draw attention to is that it really helps manage behavior and expectations in class when you put a clear agenda on the board, especially if you put in time frames, or even, if you're using a slide, even you can add in a timer so that students, like as they're creating that one pager, are seeing 20 minutes tick down. That can be really helpful for a lot of kids in knowing, okay, I may love this activity and I need to keep in mind it's not going to last forever, or, okay, this isn't my favorite thing, but it's only going to be for 4 minutes or whatever the case may be, right? This was something I talked about with Claire English when she was on the show this year. She's a behavior management expert. She had so many great things to say, and she really reinforced this idea that a clear agenda slide can be so helpful. And it's really something that matches with my own practice. I always put an agenda on the board again after my first week of teaching, because I found it so helpful in managing the first 10 minutes of the class. And really, even for myself, just being like, okay, where are we? Okay, we did number 3. It's only supposed to take 4 minutes. Now we're going to do number 4. Okay. Next thing, whatever you're teaching, it's always fun if you can, and helpful if you can activate your students' interest and prior knowledge with small activities that help students connect what's going on in the lesson, what's going on in the reading, with their own lives, their own backgrounds. In this case, with this lesson, the attendance question, the YouTube video, the silent discussion, and the question generation at the end of the close reading all help create relevance for students. Although really, also, the book itself is very relevant, right? Trevor Noah Born a Crime was just released a few years ago. So it's not like it's really hard to create a connection with this book, but all these activities really help bring it even closer to students. Okay, another thing I want to point out is the idea of getting students up and out of their seats. I know you know. This can be so helpful, especially if you're teaching at like 8 in the morning or right after lunch. Your students are just sleepy. You know that feeling where you just can't keep your eyelids open, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with what you're doing and whether it's interesting or not. You're just tired. And so when students can get up and like move around the room for a silent discussion, or partners are presenting to partners, or whatever your out of your seat activity is, working in something like this once or twice or as much as possible in a class can be really helpful. Another thing I like to think about when lesson planning is the idea of dual coding and working in some activities that give a nod to visual communication. So in this case, it was a one-pager where students were presenting their ideas with both visuals and text. It could be a sketch note activity. It could be looking at or creating infographics. Like there are so many ways in communication today where messages are conveyed with visuals and text. And so I think incorporating that into lessons in all different kinds of ways can be really helpful in ELA today. Okay, another idea for any lesson plan is to build in these like really small instances of the skill you want to practice. In this case, I know that one of the teachers who wrote in for this lesson plan wants students to be practicing connecting text with a big idea, using text to make an argument. So I just built that in small ways in the close reading one pager and in the exit task. It's not that they're writing a whole essay today, but they are closely examining a passage to find evidence for big ideas. And they're also just looking at the evidence to formulate big ideas, right? Both things. So we're helping students build argument skills without yet writing a full essay. It's just like small reps of that type of practice. And then finally, and for me, this is such a big one. When you do a lesson like this, there's quite a bit of prep up front, right? You need to have like some chart paper with your questions. You need to print out your one-pager activities. You need to queue up your YouTube video, but it's not that much. And the thing about it is, it takes all the pressure off you during the lesson. This is how I always like to create lessons. I do not want to be thinking, okay, I'm going to be up there trying to keep everybody's attention while managing like random interruptions and weird low-level behaviors that crop up and like whatever else may happen. I just don't want to spend 30 minutes talking to the class. I want all my instructions clearly on the agenda slide and on the close reading activity. And all I want to do is just be making the transitions for students and then circulating throughout the class. And when I do make those transitions, I want to really recommend that, again, referencing Claire English's wonderful guest appearance here on this podcast, you want to give students your instructions for switching around from one place in the room. Call it your attention spot. That's what she calls it over at the Unteachables. And you just always stand there. So you stand wherever it is. For me, it would be like right in the middle of the room to the right of my desk. And I would say like, okay, now we're going to watch this YouTube video. And then 5 minutes later, okay, now we're going to start this silent discussion. Here are the instructions, go. And then 10 minutes later, okay, right? So whatever I'm doing in between those moments where I make those quick announcements, I'm sure I'm going to be all over the room. But when I make the transition, I want to be standing in the same place with like a really clear call to action for students to get their attention. Okay, so that ends the teaching takeaways from this lesson portion. And last but not least, I just want to tell you that I have put all the materials together for this lesson in just a go-to packet for you. It has the YouTube video, the silent discussion questions, the exact agenda, the chameleon close reading activity, everything you need, including the outline of the chameleon to draw on your whiteboard for the exit task. And I'm going to put the link in the show notes for you to just go and grab this full curriculum set for free when you sign up for my Friday teaching idea emails, which I think are going to be really useful to you. So Thank you so much for joining me for this first episode of Plan My Lesson. It has been so much fun. I'd love to hear from you about what you think about this new series, or have you send in your idea for Plan My Lesson. I will also put the link in the show notes for the submission form. I've had about 45 submissions so far, so I've been doing tons of brainstorming, and I welcome yours to add to the list. Thanks so much for joining me today as we lesson planned for Trevor Noah's Born a Crime together. Until next time, take care of yourself and stay creative.